Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, January 14th. I hope everybody is having a great day so far. We have a lot to cover, still going over stuff from this weekend and the major breaking news from yesterday. The contract officially expired today on Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy. We're going to talk about what his next steps are, what the Cowboys' next steps are, as well as the other head coach vacancy that was filled earlier this weekend, with Mike Vrabel officially being hired with the Patriots. Other news, the Rams, they absolutely destroyed the Vikings last night, 27-9. We'll talk about that game and winners from the wild card round as well as losers. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, January 14th. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today with the big news coming out of the world of football, and that is the Cowboys have officially let go of Mike McCarthy. His contract officially expired today, just a couple of hours ago, but this news became official yesterday. Now, this is one that had me scratching my head, quite honestly. This is one that showed up a little bit out of nowhere, and the timing of it is the one that had me in the most confusion, right? First of all, they let him walk a week after everybody else goes. So they're already behind in the hiring cycle. Cowboys seemed like they were interested in keeping Mike McCarthy. This was early on in the cycle because the Bears were one of those teams that were looking at a guy like Mike McCarthy, knowing that this was a possibility. They asked for an interview. They asked for permission to interview Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys said no. And I don't know if this is a situation of the Cowboys changing their mind or Mike McCarthy changing his mind or something going on, but something clearly happened within the last week to go from where the sides were reportedly dealing in money, had money agreements figured out, to now where they have parted ways. Mike McCarthy is a free agent head coach, and the Cowboys are now the sixth team with a head coaching vacancy. And the Cowboys' head coaching vacancy is a lot different than any other head coaching vacancy that's out there, right? Or it's very unique in the fact that, first of all, the timing. And again, that's the biggest mystery in all of this for me when we're breaking down this story, the timing of everything. Because they don't get access to guys like Mike Vrabel, who had already been hired as a head coach. They no longer have the ability to get that. So if they were interested in a guy like that, in a guy who potentially is on a team with a bye week, they lose those first dibs interviews with a guy like Ben Johnson, who every other team that was interested interviewed him this last week. With a guy like Aaron Glenn, again, every team that was interested interviewed him last week. Now, those guys are still obviously not hired. They're still guys that are out there in the coaching cycle, and the Cowboys have a chance after they are done to interview them, but at that point, it might be too late. So for everything that I've seen, looking at Ben Johnson potentially to the Cowboys, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, other potential options for the Cowboys, we've heard a lot of noise around some big names, and we're going to break those down. First, Deion Sanders. That is the first big name that we have heard. And when you look at the betting sites or the odds for coaches to be hired by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, he is number one, plus 100 to go and be hired by the Dallas Cowboys. That's even money. And if he's going to go anywhere, if he's going to leave Colorado with his sons and go anywhere, it's probably going to be Dallas. But the question is he a guy that needs to coach his sons? Because we've said this before, the one thing that will drive him to the NFL immediately is if he gets to coach Shadur and Shiloh, right? That's not something I really see happening with the Cowboys. Now, there is a nightmare scenario for the Cowboys, I think, where they decide, hey, we're throwing everything out, we're doing a hard reset, bring in Deion, trade for the second or third overall pick, draft Shadur Sanders, then go grab Shiloh as an undrafted free agent because he's not going to get drafted, right? That's a nightmare scenario for the Cowboys, I think. But maybe they want that hard reset. Maybe they feel like they can get a lot for trading Dak. That's not going to happen. But there are a lot of questions surrounding this Dallas Cowboys team, of course. It's not just Dion. There's some other big name coaches out there that have had their names swirling around this. Bill Belichick being one. Obviously, he's a guy that every single time there's a head coach vacancy, as long as he is in the spotlight, he's going to get speculation. He had speculation with the Raiders and Tom Brady, and now with the Cowboys. I doubt that he leaves college. Jerry Jones is a guy that would pay that $10 million buyout that would be owed to North Carolina if it is something that happens. But I just don't really see that happening. I don't think Bill Belichick has committed to this only to immediately turn around and say, actually, I'm going to go coach the Cowboys. The one that I think is a little bit interesting, and the one that I've seen thrown around as far as big names that are kind of out there, Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of Texas. Obviously, he's got some sort of relationship there with Jerry Jones, and he just coached his team to 2 straight top fours in a row. Now, the reason that I don't see this happening, as pointed out by Tommy, the other show host here, he does the college football podcast, is they have Arch Manning coming up. And unless there's some real big red flags with Arch Manning, I just don't see Sark leaving Texas to go coach the Cowboys, which leads you with some more normal options, I will say. Guys like Kellen Moore have been getting a lot of buzz, and he's someone that obviously Jerry Jones and the Cowboys really did like. They wanted to keep him around. They kept him around from the old coaching staff to the new coaching staff when Mike McCarthy was hired originally. Obviously, he has since left and is now coaching as the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. That is a reunion that I could very easily see happening. Other names out there, obviously you have Ben Johnson, although I think that's a little bit more far-fetched because he's already done his interviews with everyone, and unless he looks at the Cowboys job with $4 million of cap space, everything basically set in stone, and he says, I really want to coach that roster. That's the roster that I want to hang my hat on. Then I don't really see Ben Johnson taking a stab at that job for the Cowboys. Cliff Kingsbury is an interesting one. He obviously is still getting paid by the Cardinals. He's done a phenomenal job as the offensive coordinator for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Another guy that you can't interview right now because they are in the playoffs, but another name that you might have to look at as a potential guy, maybe a retread over there. There's lots of different options for the Cowboys, but I think Kellen Moore is the name that makes the most sense. I don't think they're going to be able to lure Dion out of college. I think it's just going to be a little bit too much, and it doesn't make sense right now. So Kellen Moore is the guy that I think they bring in to replace Mike McCarthy. Obviously, that relationship is still there, and if there's one thing we know about Jerry Jones, he's a guy that really values having those relationships. As far as it goes on the other side of things, Mike McCarthy is still in the cycle here to go get hired as a head coach. Now, again, he's at a disadvantage here a little bit because he got put into the cycle late. Whether that be his fault or the Cowboys' fault, there's some mystery piece of information that one of those two sides got that caused this deal to fall through. Maybe Mike McCarthy, I've heard reports and rumors that Mike McCarthy wanted more term and the Cowboys were just not interested in that. But the Bears, obviously a team that were interested in him, maybe they want to go and sign him as the head coach. The Saints also expected to go and interview Mike McCarthy. He's a guy that has had relatively solid records in his 2 stops. Obviously, with the Packers, he won a Super Bowl long time ago with Aaron Rodgers, and then was relatively successful, I would say, with the Cowboys. Even this season, one that seemed dead, he was able to rally them once they got a little more healthy. They went on that little bit of a win streak down the stretch, and they played good football at the end of the season. And that's something that I think is really important, that shows how much a team cares for a coach, especially a team that's already been eliminated. The way that they were playing as hard as they could, playing their best football at the end of the year, is something that I really value when we talk about coaches. And Mike McCarthy is a guy that I think will get another opportunity, whether it be this year or next year. He's going to get another opportunity. He might have to wait a year like Mike Vrabel in that coaching free agency bubble, take a couple, odd jobs as like as just a couple assistants or something, but he'll get a job somewhere soon. Mike McCarthy has earned that. He's got that reputation around the league. I think the Bears is an interesting one. I don't know if it's in their best interest to go get a retread head coach like Mike McCarthy for Caleb Williams, unless Mike McCarthy has some brilliant offensive plan specifically designed around Caleb Williams. I don't know if that's the best option for them. The Saints, though, I really do like that fit. This is a Saints team that, if we're being completely honest, has one of the worst futures in the NFL right now. There's not a lot to look forward to. They are in cap purgatory. They are in negative cap space right now. They're going to continue to rework contracts, and everything is falling apart, right? We knew this would happen sooner rather than later, and they had to hit that reset button. They hit it quickly, they hit it fast, and they're just going to have to deal. Mike McCarthy is a guy that has that reputation that could handle being put on a bad team. The Saints aren't going to go and hire a first-time head coach and ruin their prospects of, ever really being a head coach in the future, unless they really say, hey, you've got a super long leash here. I could see Mike McCarthy going to New Orleans and being successful down there, at least riding out the bad years for a little bit and not completely ruining them. That's where I think he'll end up, in New Orleans. But let me know what you think. What went on in Dallas? Why did Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy have that falling out? I think some news came across either Jerry Jones's desk or Mike McCarthy had a change of heart or something, and the negotiations ended up falling through. This doesn't feel like plan A for either side. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the other head coaching spot that got filled over the weekend, that of the New England Patriots. Mike Vrabel, the new head coach over there. We'll talk about what that means for him, for the future, and whether or not that was a good hire. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.